So how can a business instantly boost its profits without selling a single new product? Right? It's a question that literally keeps executives awake at night. Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unlock the strategic playbook of cost control, cost reduction, and cost management. We'll look at how top-tier organizations systematically streamline their operations, protect those margins, and basically build bulletproof bottom lines from the inside out.
Here's our game plan for today's Explainer. First, the need to minimize costs. Second, defense, which is understanding cost control. Third, offense, or mastering cost reduction. Fourth, we'll put control and reduction head-to-head. And finally, we'll wrap up with the overarching cost management playbook.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the need to minimize costs.
Look, almost every enterprise out there shares one primary goal, and that's maximizing profit. But what happens if that revenue lever is stuck? Because let's be real, you can't just miraculously increase sales volume or jack up your prices every single quarter. When that happens, you gotta pull the cost lever. Now, you can't just blindly slash budgets. That's gonna destroy a business from the inside out. Instead, management uses specific, highly efficient cost accounting tools to minimize expenses while actually keeping the organization thriving. Which brings us to part two, defense, understanding cost control. Think of cost control as the defensive line in our playbook. It is highly preventative, and it's focused entirely on holding the line against budget overruns based on past and present data. It's like if an accountant sees things getting a little too expensive, they hit the brakes to keep expenses within strict, predetermined, budgeted limits. So this defense operates in a continuous loop. First, you prepare the production budget. Second, you evaluate the actual performance. Third, you compute the variances, the exact difference between the plan and reality. And finally, you implement corrective actions to fix any discrepancies. Let's make this concrete with a super quick example from our source data. Let's say your standard budgeted cost to produce 1 unit of a product is 100 rupees. That's your target. But during your evaluation, you find out the actual cost has crept up to, say, 120 rupees. Well, now you have a variance of 20 rupees. Boom. The entire cost control mechanism kicks into gear to find out why that happened and force that cost back down to exactly 100.
To actually pull this off, accountants rely on some heavy hitters like standard costing and variance analysis. Honestly, truly the bread and butter of spreadsheet enthusiasts everywhere. Add in strict inventory control, and you guarantee you're using resources economically. But there's a catch here. Putting your team in a cage of preset standards can actually severely restrict creative innovation. Why? Because everyone is entirely focused on just hitting a number, rather than, inventing a better way to work.
All right, let's flip the script. Part 3, offense, mastering cost reduction. If control holds the line, reduction is a relentless push forward. Now, the absolutely crucial rule here is doing this without ever compromising quality. It is a genuine, permanent reduction in the unit cost. You see, cost reduction isn't just about meeting the standard. It's about challenging and improving the standard itself.
Oh, and a temporary drop in government taxes?
Yeah, that doesn't count. Real cost reduction comes from internal improvements, like reducing wastage or increasing efficiency so you can produce way more units for the exact same overall cost.
Because cost reduction is heavily research-oriented, it demands some deep creativity. These are your offensive plays. You've got value engineering to discover superior materials, optimizing your economic order quantity for smarter purchasing, and benchmarking against the absolute best in the industry. These aren't just routine checks, guys. They are continuous, limitless efforts to completely reinvent how the business operates.
But listen, real cost reduction is not just a one-off, ad hoc event. For it to actually work, our source material outlines some essential requisites. First, you must set up a separate cost reduction cell dedicated entirely to planning and implementation. Second, you absolutely must secure top management support. And third, you need regular follow-ups to ensure these new, cheaper methods are actually taking hold and making a difference.
Moving on to part 4, cost control versus reduction. Time for the showdown.
Now, to a lot of people, these sound exactly the same, but they are entirely different functions. Let's look at their fundamental nature. Cost control is preventative. It looks at past data to maintain a temporary standard. Cost reduction, on the other hand, is corrective. It looks to the future, operating on the assumption that there's always room for a permanent upgrade. In short, control holds the ground, while reduction advances the position. Furthermore, cost control focuses on the overall cost. And here's a really fascinating distinction from our sources.
cost control actually doesn't care about the quality of the product. Its only goal is to reduce that variance we talked about earlier. Once that standard 100 rupee target is met, boom, cost control is finished. Cost reduction, however, strictly demands that quality is maintained, it focuses on the per unit cost, and it has absolutely no visible end. It's a continuous, limitless process. Basically, cost reduction starts right where cost control ends.
All right, let's bring it all together in part 5, the cost management playbook. So we've got our defense and we've got our offense. Now let's meet the head coach, cost management. This sits right at the executive layer. It's the broad, overarching process of identifying and classifying information so managers can effectively allocate resources. It's really about looking at the entire chessboard, predicting future expenses, and deciding which investments will actually yield the best results.
A good cost manager uses a whole variety of strategic techniques. We're talking deep time management to increase employee productivity. It requires really smart inventory management so your capital isn't just trapped gathering dust in a warehouse somewhere. They might cleverly outsource one-time projects to avoid putting new employees permanently on the payroll. And of course, they maintain a sharp market sense to negotiate better vendor contracts, all while strategically controlling headcount to ensure they've got the exact right mix of talent. But how do we know if our cost management is actually working? Well, our source material provides 2 brilliant mini stories that perfectly illustrate this. First, look at the hospital. They spend time and effort redesigning their admission procedure. It becomes easier and way faster. This is cost management that strengthens their competitive position. More patients are going to choose them. Now contrast that with an airline that decides to save a quick buck by only having 2 ticket desks. What happens? Massive lines, high customer dissatisfaction, and a terrible reputation. That is cost management that severely weakens their position in the market. Which brings us to the absolute golden rule of today's explainer. You're going to want to remember this one. An organization should never undertake practices that are predicted to weaken its strategic position, even if initially cost-effective. Seriously, blind cuts that frustrate your customers or ruin a perfectly good product might save you a few dollars today, but they will absolutely destroy the business in the long run. Good cost management isn't just about spending less. It's about spending strategically. Whether you are holding the defensive line with cost control, pushing the offensive boundary with cost reduction, or overseeing the whole operation with cost management, every single financial decision shapes your competitive edge. So, I leave you with this final thought. When you look at the playbook of your own organization, are your cost-cutting measures truly strengthening your future, or are they secretly weakening it?